Mets Talk Live, we keep it raw. Sipping on Henny, we breaking the law. Queens represent, bitches know the name. New York Mets, we bringing the flame. So raise your glass, here's to the Mets. Ballin' harder than the rest, no regrets. City field rockin', the vibe's electric. Ain't no stopping us, we getting hectic. Riding with the crew, we do it right. Mets in our soul, we ballin' all night. Queens to the core, we bringing the ruckus. Shout out to the fans, we live in the touch. Playoff dreams, we stacking the wins. Mets Talk Live, let the madness begin.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and, of course, on X in the snowy confines of North Carolina because the South is getting pummeled with snow. Go figure. I moved down south and the snow follows me from the northeast, but that's okay. It reminds me a little bit of home, and nothing's better than home. How you doing, guys? Welcome to Mets Talk Live. Hopefully everybody's enjoying themselves, and if you are anywhere where it's snowing right now and you're not used to getting snow, be safe, be careful. And anybody who's in Southern California right now, specifically LA, hopefully you're okay. Again, you know, if you lost your property, lost your house, I feel deeply sorry and hope you can, hopefully you're healthy and you're safe with your family and animals and all that stuff. But, you know, property can be rebuilt. People can't get rebuilt. So if you're safe, hopefully everybody's doing okay. So all my people, subscribers, if you are from the Southern California area, LA area, hopefully you are safe and make sure you take care of yourself. And hopefully the federal government in the state of California takes care of you because, well, they should. All right, guys. So with that said, there is so much to talk about. Just yesterday, me and Chris had a hot stove stream yesterday, and we were talking about the possibility of Alonso probably not being there. Our topics had nothing to do with Alonso, even though it was brought up, because everything that we talked about yesterday, similar to a couple of topics today, involve or work around Pete Alonso. And I think the problem that we were getting into yesterday was the fact that even though we spoke about 50 minutes about the starting rotation, when we started to talk about Pete Alonso, the problem has been, one, there's no suitors for him. Clearly, with the news that came out today that we'll talk about in just a second, there wasn't great, you know, fight for him or suitors for him, and there isn't anywhere to go. And that's why the news came out today. And it is kind of interesting because we do got to break down the offer that came from the Alonso camp. Even though we don't have direct numbers except for the years, what's the difference from the Mets offer to the Alonso offer? And we'll get into that. Even though we don't know the exact numbers of the Alonso offer, we can kind of break it down and think that he probably wants one thing over another, and we'll talk about that in a second. And somebody did, Mike, I'm glad you're safe, buddy. Keep on being safe from Southern California. The thing with the Pete Alonso situation is that, and I think somebody said, I'm not sure who said it, and if I can find it, give me a second. I think somebody said it. I'm sorry if I missed it. I see the comments going and I kind of lost it. Somebody said, and if you could say it again in the comments, somebody said that, you know, they think the Mets are going to start, you know, making some moves here. And yeah, I think so too. But I think a lot has to do with the Pete Alonso situation. I think they're dormant right now. One, because they can't do anything with Sasaki, but wait. And Pete Alonso is kind of playing this back and forth right now. And that's where I think the Mets are kind of on a holding pattern right now when it comes to signing anybody. I think that's the issue that we kind of fall into, and that's why the Mets haven't really done much at all. You know, since the Soto signing, they signed Frankie Montas, Clay Holmes, and Sean Manaea, which isn't terrible, but it ain't nothing to, you know, give it a grade. So they got to do more. We know they need at least one more bat. We know they had to pair another bat, big bat, with Juan Soto, and Pete Alonso could be that guy, right? I still don't think Pete Alonso is going to be the only guy. I still think they're going to do something else. Now, if that's a Jurickson Profar, which I think the Mets are in on, that's something that we could talk about too. I think Bregman and Santander is still on the table because with the news that came out today with Pete Alonso, and we'll get into the first topic of the night, it came out of nowhere. The Mets, I was at work, and one of my coworkers who is a Mets fan as well, show me his phone and show me the report by Jim Bowden on MLB Network or MLB Radio. Jim Duquette, excuse me. Jim Duquette saying that the Mets camp, the Alonso camp, offered the Mets a 3-year with opt-outs. And I'm like, what? Like, when do you see a player counter offer like that publicly? Right? It happens more often than not internally and not public. So you don't really see it as much, but to see it public is very interesting. Like, this is an exclusive deal for the Mets only at this point. So if it's a 3-year deal, and this is where I'm at this point, because if it is a 3-year deal, if the Mets did offer 3 for $90, which they did, and Alonso's offer is 3 years for whatever money, we'll get into that in a second. It's kind of interesting because if it's just 3 years and they're not concerned about the money, then this deal should be happening quickly over the next 24 hours. And the way David Stearns has been signing people, probably 2:00 in the morning. So I don't see how the Mets could not like this deal. If this is true, what Jim Duquette has reported, that it's a 3-year deal with opt-outs, this is beautiful for the Mets because what this tells us, and now we understand the Mets offer a little bit more. The Mets didn't have no opt-outs in that 3-year for $90 million. That's probably a fact. And if there was an opt-out, it might have not been after 1 year. It might have been after 2 years or 3 years, or after 2 years. So multiple opt-outs in Alonso's offer to the Mets with 3 years tells me that the Mets opt-outs, if any at all, in their 3 for $90 million. So the Mets offered obviously 3 for $90, but we didn't get the exact details. We weren't sure if there was opt-outs or if there's 1 opt-out, 2 opt-outs, or no opt-outs. We really haven't got that information, right? A lot of us were speculating, reporters were speculating. At this point, guess what? Now we kind of have an idea that with the counter offer that Pete Alonso has given the Mets with 3 years, which similar years, but there's opt-outs, which I'm assuming at least 1 opt-out is after the first year, right? Because it doesn't make sense to me for him to go in free agency at 31. I mean, I guess you could 31, 32 after the second year of the contract. So what I'm thinking here is that the Mets offer had no opt-outs, and the Alonso counteroffer has multiple opt-outs after the first year and the second year, which I think probably benefits the Mets more. And what this also tells me is that Pete Alonso is not getting any offers close to what even he's counter-offering, or the Mets offered him. So, and by the way, guys, for all the killing that a lot of people have given David Stearns and the nonsense, not that people are calling small market Stearns and Stearns is, asleep at the wheel. David Stearns has played this Pete Alonso situation perfectly. This is 100% a great job by David Stearns. I don't care if you're a homegrown talent. If you can get a deal that is team friendly, that's what you always want. I don't care what the name is, right? Yes, you got to completely overspend to get a Juan Soto, right? But when you're a Pete Alonso, who is not one of the best first basemen in the league, who is not even a top 10 player, guess what? You're going to get stuff like that. And again, the Nimmo situation, somebody was bringing up Nimmo as comparison to a homegrown guy like Pete Alonso. With Nimmo, how the Mets overspent to bring back Nimmo. But if you go back to a couple of years ago when Nimmo was a free agent, there was a couple of teams heavily pursuing Brandon Nimmo, unlike the lack of pursuing from a team or teams for Pete Alonso. That's the difference, right? When the Mets want, and I think the Mets do want Pete Alonso, and I do think if there was teams, say if the Angels and the Cubs were going after Pete Alonso, I think the Mets would go to 6-7 years to retain Pete Alonso. But when you don't have to, why do it? There was somebody that commented the other day on X on one of my posts and says, why not the Mets just give 6 years to Pete Alonso for, that averages around $28 to $30 million a year? I'm like, why do you have to bid against yourself? You don't have to. I don't care who you are, what team you are. You're never gonna bid against yourself. If you know that nobody else is really bidding or even trying to get that player as much as you're trying to get them, you don't have to overbid at all. And that's what the Mets are doing here, right? Juan Soto, there was a ton of competition. Of course, you have to overspend and overpay. The same thing like Brandon Nimmo. I guarantee you, if Nimmo wasn't getting any heat from other teams, as teams targeted Brandon Nimmo, unlike Pete Alonso, the Mets would have probably took Nimmo on a 4-year deal, maybe a 5-year deal. That is the difference. And what people don't understand is the fact that the Mets, when they go after a player, or any team goes after a player, the more competition, the more you have to overpay for a player you want, right? Look at the Yankees and the Red Sox for Max Fried. Same thing, right? The Red Sox had a 7-year deal on the table. The Yankees weren't comfortable going with 8 years, but they know they needed him and they wanted him. And they went the 8th year. Overpay, but they got the guy. Same situation with the Brandon Nimmo situation. Same thing with Juan Soto. Same thing. With Pete Alonso, there isn't that group of teams or even a few teams that are fighting for Pete Alonso. And the Mets know that. So why give a 6-year deal when you don't have to? Unfortunately for Pete Alonso, teams around the league don't think he's as good as he might think. He might be more beneficial to the Mets than, say, the Angels or the Cubs or the whoever else that might be in on Pete Alonso. I think Pete Alonso benefits the Mets more than he would benefit another team. Because I think Pete Alonso needs better players around him, because he isn't the guy that Mets fans portrayed as the guy. That's where we have to get away from for Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is part of the team. He isn't the guy. Lindor, Soto, they're the guys. Pete Alonso is just another player in the lineup. That's what he is. Met fans have to move from that. Pete Alonso is, God and the best thing since sliced bread, when he's not. He's a very good player with a number of flaws. And that's the issue that other teams see in Pete Alonso. We've known this for years, that other teams around the league don't think Alonso is even a top 15, top 20 player. Like they believe, around the league, they believe that. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't fit the Mets better and he benefits the Mets more. Having Pete Alonso on the Mets benefits us than it would any other team he goes to. Because Pete Alonso can't be the guy. If the Angels get Pete Alonso is going to be the guy. Even over Mike Trout, who was constantly injured. But Pete Alonso is going to have to pick up the slack of the lack of offense on that team, especially if Mike Trout gets hurt again. So that is the difference. And because David Stern has completely played this perfectly with Pete Alonso, there's some Mets fans that are still mad about it. Why don't you just give your homegrown guy 6 years? And then somebody brings up Brandon Nimmo. Difference is Nimmo was sought after by other teams that were targeting Brandon Nimmo. Teams are not targeting Pete Alonso. All the teams that needed first baseman didn't even bother with Pete Alonso and went elsewhere for a first baseman. We don't even know if the Angels are a legitimate on with Pete Alonso, or even the Giants for that matter. Right? That could be Boris and John Heyman spew just to get the Mets to panic a little bit. And David Stearns has not. At this point, if the Mets do want Pete Alonso, it's going to be on a 3-year deal. It's either going to be on the Mets' terms or Alonso's terms. Now, they might work with the number a little bit money-wise. And to talk about the money as a whole, you would think that when it comes to these two contracts, the Mets offer and the Alonso offer, is it possible, Carlos? That's not true. I don't think that's fair, right? Me and you are on the same page with Pete Alonso. We don't think he's as good as or at least Met fans portray him as. There is way too many flaws, but I don't agree with you there. I'm not saying the Mets don't need Alonso. I think it's harder. Now, if the Mets don't get Alonso, they better get a Bregman or Santander. You cannot go with Vientos at first and then say Mauricio at third base. I don't like that. I don't care about the youth movement. I don't care about potential. The hell with that. All right, because if Mauricio isn't the guy we think he is, you're losing offense from your lineup. There's no guarantee that Mauricio is going to provide that. Unfortunately for Mauricio, unfortunately for Acuna and Beatty and Williams, there's not many spots to play. And unfortunately, they got to fight for a spot, and most likely might be second base. So the fact that Pete Alonso made a counteroffer to the Mets basically proves that he has no suitors, and that Angels and Giants was probably either a Boris, the Boris mouthpiece, or John Heyman's the mouthpiece for Boris, or maybe the Giants and Angels just happen to have a conversation, says, hey, what do you want? Because I don't think Pete Alonso is going to take a 3-year deal with the Angels or the Giants. If he goes there, they're going to have to overspend to get him. And I don't see that happening. And clearly, Pete Alonso and Scott Boras believe that as well. Because why would they give an exclusive counteroffer to the Mets? So, unfortunately, Pete Alonso bet on himself, and he lost. Now, it's hard to say he lost when he's probably going to get $30 million a year. But I want to ask you guys one thing. Is this counteroffer not just about opt-outs, right? It's clear that the Mets 3 for $90 probably didn't have any opt-outs. I think the Mets wanted to protect themselves just in case they can't get Vladimir Guerrero when he becomes a free agent. And if Pete Alonso doesn't have an opt-out, and the Mets have him for the next 3 years, they might not go as aggressively for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next year than they might want to. And they actually, they won't go after Vladimir Guerrero as much because you got Pete Alonso locked up for at least 2 more years with no opt-outs. I think there's more to the Alonso counteroffer than we don't know the number. We know the years, 3 years with opt-outs. I'm thinking Pete Alonso is asking for more than $30 million a year. It just seems that way because if he offered 3 years and opt-outs, the Mets would have been, yeah, sure, cool. But I think the number is probably $40 million a year, $35 to $40 million a year. Because why else would you counter with just opt-outs? Like, I think the Mets would be willing to at least have one opt-out in a 3-year deal in their own contract. Why would Alonso counteroffer for 3 years, same years as the Mets offered, but with multiple opt-outs? Clearly, there's something more to that with that situation. And in year 0, I know Vladdy went to arbitration. He got $28.5 million. So even if Alonso took the Mets deal, he's making $1.5 million more than Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which he shouldn't, because he's not better than him. So, but it is what it is. The market dictates what players get paid. I'm thinking Alonso, with the 3-year and opt-outs, is offering or asking for between $35 and $40 million. At this point, I don't care about the money. The years is all I care about. I would give it, just because it's 3 years and opt-outs, I give you $50 million. I don't care. As long as I know that there's a possibility of us getting out of it at some point if he opts out. Because Pete Alonso clearly wants a long-term deal. And if he has a really good season, he makes $40 million for 1 year, opts out, and maybe if he hits 40 home runs, 120 RBIs, and bats 250, he can go back on the market and get a 5-year deal. Maybe for less money per year, but at least he gets the longevity. He gets the security. And I think that's what it actually might be. Yeah, but Carlos, I don't think they care about the money, though. That's the issue. That is the thing where you're wrong. They don't care about. They're willing to give more money for less years. That's the difference. And I do think Pete Alonso is going to sign over the next day or two. I wouldn't be shocked tomorrow it happens. And I think it either might happen early, prior to the football playoff game starting, or Sunday night, late Sunday night, after the second football game. So, John, I don't think Stearns doesn't want Pete. I don't think he wants Pete for 6 years. Because you don't offer 3 years and don't want somebody. It's not a bad deal. It's a fair deal. He's giving you $30 million a year, which is the highest AAV amongst all first basemen. And he's giving you a 3-year deal because why does he have to give a 5-year deal or even a 4-year deal? He doesn't have to, because nobody else is given that. There's no need to bid against yourself. So unfortunately for Pete Alonso, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Too bad for him, right? If the Mets can get Pete Alonso for, even if it's Alonso's offer, let's say if it's 3 years with multiple opt-outs after the first and second year, and it's $40 million, who cares? I don't care. Because it's a short-term deal, I don't care. And there's opt-outs, that gives the Mets an automatic play into next offseason to go after aggressively for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And I think it's going to happen. No, Cindy, I don't believe that one bit. I just think Stearns knows the market for Pete Alonso. I think he does. I don't see why. You know, why do you think he doesn't want him? If he didn't want him, he wouldn't offer him a deal at all. Like, David Stearns knows there isn't a market where a team's going to give him 4+ years to Pete Alonso. Why give him that if you don't have to? Not only does it protect the team in the future over the next 3 to 5 years, because you don't have to worry about a long-term deal, and you can have options going into next offseason if you really want to go after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's the idea. Yeah, zero. Well, see, that's the thing, though, right? What's the difference? I'm sorry, the opt-outs isn't the only thing in the counteroffer to Pete Alonso, because that doesn't make sense. You're going to tell me they couldn't negotiate at least one opt-out in the Mets offer? Come on. The Mets would do it. So it's telling me that he added opt-outs and he added to more. Maybe he wants $35 million a year. But it's more than what the Mets are offering him at $30 million per. That's the only thing I can think of, because if the money isn't so much different, this either team can, either party can budge here for an opt-out. Like, I don't see why they couldn't sit down and figure out an opt-out or multiple opt-outs. The counteroffer from Alonso has to do with probably more money per year. And is probably at least $5 million more. Because then it doesn't make sense. Yeah, it could be 3 for 110. But if it's 3 for 110, again, I don't care about the money per year. I don't want Pete Alonso for, I even said it yesterday. I don't mind going the fourth year, but at $30 million a year. I don't want to go 5+ years. So I don't care about the money at this point. Steve Cohen, Stearns don't care about the money per year. They care about the years. So the fact that Pete Alonso is crawling back to the Mets tells me there's nothing out there that is worth even looking at, because he's not going to the Angels or the Giants or any other team for a 3-year deal. Unless it's a 5+ year deal, he's coming back to the Mets. So, no, zero. He is going to get more than Freeman. That's a fact. Look, I don't think he should, because he's not better than Freeman. But again, the market dictates. When the further you get away from those contracts like Freeman, the more it's going to be, just because the market dictates that. It has nothing to do with Freddie Freeman anymore, because Pete Alonso's not getting a longer-term deal, even what Freddie Freeman got. Zero, he is. If the Mets offered him $30 million per year, he's going to get that, because he can either take the Mets offer or the Mets accept his counteroffer, which is probably for a little bit more money. So he's going to get more money than Freddie Freeman per year. Longevity of a contract, no. But per year, yes. It's just how it goes. It's just how the market dictates. Freddie Freeman's contract has nothing to do with Pete Alonso anymore, because the long-term deal is completely off the table. Now, if he was talking about a 5-year deal, because what did Freddie Freeman get? A 5-year deal, if I'm not mistaken? If we were talking about a 5-year deal, he wouldn't get $30 million a year. He would get just under Freddie Freeman. But because it's a short-term deal, you're going to get more money. It's just that simple. Yeah, zero. I don't. Well, we'll see, right? We'll see. Again, we haven't heard the Mets say anything yet, or a reporter say anything about the Mets thinking about that deal. And even Boris didn't even had no comment with reporters today either, which tells me something's close. Because Boris, if things weren't close, he would be spewing his mouth to John Heyman, and John Heyman would be reporting it. Because Boris didn't say any comment about that counteroffer, tells me that this deal, whatever contract they're talking about, is closer than we actually think. So the only thing that I can think of when it comes to the counteroffer, so we can move on here, is if the only thing I can think of, because the opt-outs for the same years, they're both 3-year deals. I don't see why Alonso would counteroffer with multiple opt-outs when he could have just they could have negotiated that, behind closed doors without going public for an opt-out. I don't think the Mets would have, locked the door and says get the hell out. So this counteroffer probably is more money AAV per year. At least $5 million more than what the Mets are offering per year. That's the only thing I can think of. So until we actually zero. I mean, it's possible, but again, you're looking at it completely wrong. You're looking at it at the Freddie Freeman factor, which has nothing to do with it anymore. The AAV has nothing to do with Freddie Freeman anymore, and the total contract has nothing to do with Freddie Freeman anymore. You look at Freddie Freeman with Alonso, because that's what we were doing last year, comparing Pete Alonso's possible contract to Freddie Freeman, because that was the last contract a first baseman got of a top first baseman. But because it's not a 5-6 year deal, it's irrelevant talking about what Freddie Freeman's getting compared to Pete Alonso. That has nothing to do with it. That you got to understand that. It has nothing to do with it anymore because it's a short-term deal. Short-term deal means more money. It's just a fact. Because even if it's $30 million a year, he's still getting more than Freddie Freeman. So we're talking about pennies here when it comes to $30 million to $35 million. That is not a lot of money in baseball terms anymore. Well, zero, that's what I'm talking about. Comparing Freeman and Alonso is irrelevant when it comes to contracts, because we're not talking about a 5-6 year deal. We're talking about a shorter term deal, which has nothing to do with what Freeman got at all. The AAV is dictating because of the short term deal. And $30 million and $35 million in this aspect it is pennies in baseball terms. There's terrible players that can get $10 million a year who is one of the worst players in baseball for 1 year. So $5 million, I mean, they dig it up on a diamond on the baseball field. That's how minimal $5 million is in baseball terms now. So it could be a signing bonus. That's a possibility, but maybe. Sure, but I don't think that's stopping anybody, to be quite honest with you. I don't think Steve Cohen's gonna, close up his wallet for a signing bonus. I don't think he's gonna do that. So I think the signing bonus might be, maybe they are negotiating the signing bonus or whatever, and and again, they could already have a deal in place. They're just going over, is the first year going to be more money than the second year or the third year, and blah, 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 and all that craziness. What deferments there might be, you never know. So, but I do think over the next 48 hours, Pete Alonso is going to sign with the Mets, because it doesn't make sense why you make a counteroffer if Boris and Pete Alonso are confident there's another team out there willing to give more years and more money, because he wouldn't do that. And I don't see him taking a 3-year deal with another team, unless the Mets pull their 3 for $90 because they get pissed off with the counteroffer for Pete Alonso, which I don't see that happening. Because I think if you're going to offer 3 for $90 with no opt-outs, which apparently that might have been the offer from the Mets, you're willing to do that, on the Mets end. So I just see it's going to come into place probably over the next 24 to 48 hours, and we'll see. So before we run over to the next side of the topics, what if the Mets say no with that counteroffer and Pete Alonso doesn't take that 3 for $90 the Mets offer and he goes elsewhere? Well, this leads to the Mets completely pivoting. And the Mets meeting with Tanner Scott tells me that they're working on this bullpen to be a hell of a lot better, elite, because you get Tanner Scott and you pair him with Diaz, you got 2 closers at the back end of your bullpen that are going to pitch basically every day. when there's a situation where you're going to close a game, even if Diaz is not available, you got Tanner Scott. When Tanner Scott's not available, you got Diaz. But adding Diaz to Buto, Nunez, Garrett, and Diaz, and adding Tanner Scott, that is a 5-man bullpen at the moment that is probably, I would say, top 3 in baseball, easily. And if you add a David Robertson or a Ryan Stanek, because Tanner Scott is not just your late inning bullpen guy, either a bridge to Diaz or a closer for a day. You also have a left-hander in the bullpen. So now your other 2 bullpen arms doesn't have to be a lefty, or another one doesn't have to be a lefty, even though you could get like one of those lefties that are kind of like more of a Swiss Army knife type of lefty that can get out either righties and lefties, or just a specialized lefty, which there ain't that many of them anymore. But I do wonder if you get Tanner Scott, are they going to go after another lefty? They might not, but you don't have to, because you got a lefty in the bullpen. You can bring back Ryan Stanek, and then your last bullpen arm will probably be somebody who is probably a long man. Some guy that can come in the 5th inning or the 4th inning if a pitcher doesn't have it, and pitch maybe 2, maybe 3 innings. So, yeah, and Jeff Hoffman did sign, and that was the guy that I was looking at that I think the Mets could have got, but he went to the Blue Jays. So, but again, there's so many bullpen arms available. I'm not concerned about that. But right now, I want Tanner Scott. And this is why I want the Pete Alonso situation to get resolved. Because I just want it to end already. Like, the quicker Pete Alonso gets done, the Mets can completely move on and do what they need to do to fill up finish their roster. Because I still believe if they get Pete Alonso, are they done getting bad? I don't think so. Because there's still concern with the situation. Why are the Mets going after 2 outfielders? Right? You got Juan Soto in right field. You got either Siri or Tyrone Taylor in center. There's concern within the Mets organization about Brandon Nimmo being healthy. There's something going on with Brandon Nimmo, because you don't offer Teoscar Hernandez a multi-year deal when, yes, he could play some left and right field and play some in DH. So it's kind of that would be a good move for the Mets. But are they looking at a guy that can play left field every single day? And maybe Nimmo is going to be that DH, which isn't the worst thing in the world. You get him off his feet most of the time, and you keep him healthier, which should help him offensively. So I'm thinking the Mets might be looking for another outfielder that can fill in and take the place of Brandon Nimmo in left field. I feel like that's the case, because going after Teoscar Hernandez, now looking like they're looking at Profar, tells me that they need somebody in left field. Nimmo, after the playoffs, was in a walking boot. We know he has plantar fasciitis in both legs, in both feet. So that's a problem. This is the guy you can't count on to stay healthy. I'm sorry. Right? Nimmo's has some good seasons. He's a workhorse. He's a guy, even during the playoffs, beating out a ground ball when we know his feet were killing him and he barely can move, beating out a ball in the playoffs against the Dodgers, right? He's a hard-nosed player. He gives 100% every time. You can't ask for more from a player. But Nimmo being hurt does not help this team. Being hurt in the playoffs, again, I'm not blaming Nimmo for getting hurt. Being hurt in the playoffs hurt our lineup, because Nimmo was basically a no-show in the playoffs because of his feet, because of his injuries. So I believe that within the Mets organization, they don't think Nimmo can stay healthy through 162 games playing left field every day. So there's a possibility that the Mets might DH Nimmo I'm not saying all the time, but more often than not. And that's why I think when it comes to Bregman and Santander, because of this Alonso situation kind of developing here, and it's looking more and more that some way or another, it's either going to be the Mets offer or Alonso's offer that's going to put these two parties together, and the Mets and Alonso are going to come up with a deal, and Alonso's going to be a Met, which means that kind of knocks Bregman out of the running for the Mets. But Anthony Santander might be an option because you can put Anthony Santander in left field and DH Nimmo. And that's fine because you get to keep Nimmo's bat in the lineup, and you can probably keep him more healthy not playing him in left field. And Nimmo, all he has to do is hit. That is much better than doing that. than leaving Nimmo in left field, because if you don't get anybody else, and that's why Jurickson Profar is probably an option, or even a Kiki Hernandez, because I don't think the Mets trust Nimmo to stay healthy, and I don't blame him. You can't have another quality option other than Brandon Nimmo. Yeah, you can put Tyrone Taylor out there, but Tyrone Taylor, you're not going to get anywhere near the numbers that Nimmo can give when he's healthy. Profar and Santander are better than Tyrone Taylor, even though I like Tyrone Taylor a lot. Tyrone Taylor is more of a defensive player. He got some clutch hits last year, but he's not going to put up the numbers of Profar can, or even a Santander. So you can't go with Tyrone Taylor in left field and Siri, and you're going to have two guys in the lineup that are basically dead at the bottom of the order. I don't want that. Either get me Profar, put him in left field every single day, and DH Nimmo, or get Santander, which I rather have, who's a switch hitter, who can hit 30 bombs, and probably bat seventh in this lineup, sixth or seventh in this lineup. And now you're talking about something really, really good, and a lineup that is deep, that is dangerous, and you also get Tanner Scott. If you can get Pete Alonso, Santander, and Tanner Scott, that is a damn good offseason. I'm still not giving them an A because I'm very upset about the rotation. But it's a very good offseason. You can deal with a slightly above average rotation when you got a top 5 bullpen and the lineup that you could possibly have with Santander, Nimmo as the DH, and Alonso. That is a really damn good lineup. Let's go over the lineup with the names I mentioned. Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Vientos, Nimmo, Santander, Alvarez. Who am I missing? Jeff McNeil. Let's say Jeff McNeil's here. I think I'm missing somebody. I'm missing somebody? Trying to think, who am I missing? Help me out, guys. I'm sorry. Right? We got 7. That's 8, right? And Siri. Those are your 9 guys. That's your lineup. So from 1 through 7, you got quality, really damn good hitters. And you got Alvarez basically batting at the bottom of the order. Batting 7th, basically. With McNeil 8th and Siri 9th. That is a really deep lineup. That is a lineup where from 1 through 7, you're going to get basically from 1 through 5, or even 1 through 6, you're going to get 20 plus home runs easily from everybody. And then 7 through 9, or 8 through 9, if it's McNeil that can probably provide between 12 and 15 home runs, you can get Siri, who's a 20 home run guy. So you can have 8 out of your 9 guys in the lineup hitting 20 plus home runs. And obviously Lindor's going to hit 25 to 30 home runs. Soto's going to hit probably between 30 and 35 home runs. You're going to get Vientos 25 to 30 home runs. You're going to get Alonso 30 to 40 home runs. And you're going to get Alvarez that I think is going to hit between 20 and 25 home runs. So all those guys and Santander can hit 25 to 30 home runs. Like you can actually have 5 guys in your lineup to hit 30 home runs this year. If that's the case, you're gonna have one of the better lineups in baseball. You're gonna challenge the Dodgers, and I think the Mets would have a deeper lineup than the Dodgers if those names are in the lineup on opening day. This is the path, right? I don't think the Mets are gonna get Sasaki. I think the rotation is what it is. Maybe they add another guy. Who knows if it's not Sasaki? But right now, they only got 5 guys that are officially in the rotation. The 6th guy is still a question mark. Is it Griffin Cannon? Is it Tyler McGill? Blackburn is not coming back until the middle of May, maybe later. So right now it's Griffin Cannon or Tyler McGill as your 6th starter, which is stupid to go to the 6-man rotation. But we know we have to pamper Kodai Senga because he can't pitch every 5th day, and pitch every 5th day and pitch well, let alone stay healthy. So if Zero, I'd love for the Mets to trade for a Luis Castillo or a Dylan Cease. I'd love that. That would put my grade to an A if they get the guys that I want. Let's say the rotation is done, which I won't be happy with, but let's say it is. The Mets signed Tanner Scott, making his bullpen really good, and still probably get another arm or 2 in the bullpen. But even just with Tanner Scott and the names I mentioned already in the Mets bullpen, it's already a damn good bullpen. Sign Alonso, sign Anthony Santander to play left field. You sign Anthony Santander to play left field, DH Nimmo, get him off his feet on the field. Let Nimmo play like once a week or maybe even twice a week in the field, just to get him reps in the outfield just in case, if of an injury and you need Nimmo to play the outfield. But for the most part, DH Nimmo. Nimmo's best quality is keeping his bat in the lineup when healthy. When he's healthy, he'll be fine. So get Tanner Scott, sign Alonso, get Anthony Santander to play left field, DH Nimmo. There's a reason why the Mets are going after outfielders, quality outfielders that can play every day and be productive in a lineup, because the organization probably does not trust Nimmo to play more than 150 games, if that. And the way they're trying to probably keeping him healthy is to DH Nimmo. And I'm okay with that. And that's what they should do, right? Make your team better by moving guys around, which you would move them on the DH, get Anthony Santander, who's a quality left fielder or quality outfielder. He can play corners, and he's a switch hitter, which helps the lineup tremendously, and you just get better. So my whole thing here, get Tanner Scott, sign Alonso, sign Anthony Santander. Now you're talking about a lineup that is probably, I would say, top 4 or 5 in baseball, if not even top 3, possibly top 3, because you got 1 through 7 that is dangerous, and not a lot of teams have that. And if you got Tanner Scott in the bullpen with Diaz, with Buto, with Nunez, with Reed Garrett, and possibly either Robinson or Stanek and a long man, you got one of the better bullpens in baseball. So you got a top 5 offense. You got one of the better bullpens in baseball. And that can help the slightly above average, let's say average rotation, that can pick up the slack with the offense and the bullpen. Well, I don't think Bregman was a smoke screen. I think if the Mets don't sign Alonso, they're going to sign Bregman. So, but now that it seems like the Pete Alonso Mets situation is probably going to come to an end, and I think they're going to come together on a contract, Bregman doesn't make sense anymore. Because where are you going to play him? What are you going to DH Vientos? I mean, you could, but I don't see the Mets moving Vientos out of third base unless Pete Alonso is not a Met. Because then it does, like, I mean, listen, I'd be okay with that. Trust me. I want Bregman. I want Bregman over Anthony Santander. But if you get Alonso, there's no need to move Vientos off of third base. Even though you do it for Bregman. But you can probably get, like, Bregman's looking for a 6-year deal. You could probably get Santander for a 4-year deal, which is probably more up the Mets' alley and what Stearns likes. So that's why Santander would make more sense. Santander can play left field, Nimmo goes to DH, and your defense alignment is set, and your lineup is set. Really set. Brad, no. You said we will be able to get Scott and Alonso, but not Santander. Why? They got $76 million before they get to their third luxury tax. The Mets have to spend $76 million more to have a higher payroll or a similar payroll than last year. If Tanner Scott's going to get between 18 and 20 million per year, let's say Alonso gets 35. That's $55 million. The Mets still have $20 plus million before they even get to their payroll from last year, let alone going over it. So they got a lot of room here. Well, Brad, he got a 4-year offer from the Blue Jays. I don't think Santander wants to go to the Blue Jays unless he has no other choice. I think he is waiting for Pete Alonso to sign because I think the Mets are going to be involved in Anthony Santander. Because once Pete Alonso signs, the Mets are going to move quickly on other players to solidify their roster. That's a fact. So, and Truman, you're damn right. We're rich, bitch. No, zero. I understand the tax doesn't exist, but what I'm saying is there's still room before the third luxury tax, before they even get to that point. The Mets are going to go over that because even if they get Scott and Alonso, they still got multiple bullpen arms they have to get. And they'll probably, I mean, they could still be under it by $10 to $15 million, depending on if, even if they get Sasaki and Scott and Alonso, they still have about $15 million to work with before the luxury tax, but I think they're going to go over it. So I don't think it matters. I think the two holdups are the Alonso situation and the Sasaki situation. Now, the Mets can't do anything with Sasaki because it's minimal money. It's chump change with the overall payroll with Sasaki. So if the Mets get Sasaki, it's not going to hurt their decision making either way. Alonso is stopping what they're trying to do right now. Because if Alonso went elsewhere, the Mets are going to pivot to either Bregman or Santander. That's a fact. Because you don't get the bat of Pete Alonso, you got to get one or the other of Bregman or Santander. Because then it's a terrible offseason if you don't. Because you're not going to buy me with a bill of goods and say Vientos going to first base and either Mauricio is going to third base. Like, that doesn't excite me. Now, I'm excited the possibility of Mauricio at third base and could be a damn good player, but that's too many ifs for me. That is not a scary lineup for me anymore. It's really not. So I'm leaving Sasaki out of it because the Mets can't choose to get Sasaki. They don't have a choice. It's Sasaki's decision and nobody else's. So the Mets just have to wait. Let's put Sasaki to the side. That's not something that I have to worry about. This is my rest of the offseason. Tanner Scott, Alonso, Santander to play left field, DH Nimmo, just to keep him healthy. Bring back Ryan Stanek and get somebody else that can be a long man, whoever it might be. If they want Tyler McGill to be the long man in the bullpen or Griffin Cannon or somebody else, you get a long man. Well, Larry, it could be a disappointing offseason because the Mets have so many holes, especially in the rotation and the bullpen for that matter, that Soto is not enough. Soto's going to help, but there's more to do. All right. Yeah, but Brooks Raley is not going to be ready probably until like June. And that's if he's going to get through his progression of rehab through Tommy John. So I'm not thinking about Brooks Raley. You can get him and rehab him through the minors, and maybe he'll be like a trade deadline acquisition. If he comes back in late June, early July, that would be nice. I mean, you could do that, but that's something where you have to get him on like a 1 year, $5 million deal with a lot of incentives. So my rest of the offseason, not talking about Sasaki because he's got to choose. Mets can't do anything about that. Scott, Alonso, Santander to put him in left field, DH Nimmo, and bring back Ryan Stanek for the bullpen. And now you got a damn good bullpen, a very deep lineup, and it protects the rotation that could be above average. But right now, I think they're average. But if you got a hell of a good lineup and a very good bullpen, it counteracts what the rotation can do. Because now you're playing with a shorter. You can play with a shorter rotation. You don't have to. It's more of a bullpen game now, where you don't have to worry about guys going 6-7 innings and pray that you can get to your 8th and 9th inning guy. Now you got guys that can go from the 6th inning on, and it's basically a 5-inning game at this point. Get your starter to the 5th inning, and now you got a bullpen going 6-9. I'm not saying every day, but you're more confident when your bullpen comes in the 6th inning on with the bullpen that I put out there than you are at the moment. Because if you don't get Tanner Scott, you're going to get probably a Robinson, a Stanek, maybe a lefty. You're going to get a lefty in here, but you're not going to get the top of the top quality. And now you got a decent, pretty good bullpen with a slightly an average rotation. Even if you do get Anthony Santander and Alonso here, the lineup's good. But now you're still talking about you got to get to your 7th inning to make your bullpen be, at the elite level. And that's where I think where the Mets could lose games, to be quite honest with you. So get Tanner Scott in here. It really does help your bullpen. Bring Alonso back, which it seems like it's going to happen probably over the next 48 hours. Get Anthony Santander. You get Santander here, you put him in left field, you DH Nimmo. One, Anthony Santander can play left field. You get a power bat that can give you 30 home runs, making your lineup deeper. You save Nimmo from playing the field, which should keep him healthy as the DH. You can put Nimmo in, twice a week just to get him out there on the field. And your lineup's deeper. You keep Nimmo healthy, which is key for this lineup. And with your rotation that's average right now, your bullpen that can be at an elite level and a top 5 bullpen easily can counter what the rotation might not give you. Now you're making your game a 5-inning game at this point. You don't need your rotation to go deeper into games to get to your better guys in your bullpen. I can bring in Stanek, Buto, Nunez, Scott, Garrett. You don't have to worry about it because all those guys can pitch in the 5th or 6th inning, and you don't have to worry about getting to the 7th inning with bullpen eyes. And if a guy can't go past the 5th inning, now you got to figure out guys that you don't trust getting the 6th inning, getting the 7th inning, so you can get to your trusted 8th and 9th inning guys. Now you don't have to worry about that. Shorten the game. If you shorten the game with the potential of this lineup, you're going to win more games. It's not that simple, but it kind of is. So, all right, guys. So we're in about an hour right now, and the fact of the matter is, the counteroffer, if you haven't heard, which I hope you have, but if you didn't, the Mets offered 3 for $90, and with the counteroffer that Alonso proposed, which is also 3 years, we don't know the amount. That hasn't come out, but we know there's multiple opt-outs. Which, if there's multiple opt-outs, 3-year deal, do the easy math. It's the first opt-out at the first year and second year. tells me that either the Mets did have opt-outs in their deal or not. We're not completely sure about that. But let's say there is an opt-out after the first year, one opt-out, and it's $30 million. I'm thinking that part of the counteroffer from Alonso to the Mets is that it might be a little bit more money, maybe $35 million per year. So just do the math. What is it, $110 million for 3 years for $35 million? So that's what they're doing. And yeah, Jeff Hoffman did go to the Blue Jays for 3 years. I believe 3 years, $33 million, I think I saw. So that's where we are right now. Right now, I'm confident in saying the Mets and Alonso are going to come to a deal soon, very soon. Because this game can't be played anymore. Either the Mets back out and say the hell with this and move on, or it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen at this point. Alonso's trying to come, closer to where the Mets were, which tells me there ain't that much out there for Pete Alonso at all. And the Mets have him right where they want him. They're going to come together. Once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Talk Live here for the hour of the stream. I wasn't going to do a stream today, but with the Alonso news, I thought I should. I know Chris did a stream earlier today, talked about Pete Alonso. I was like, you know what? Let me get on too. Let's talk some Pete Alonso here and have a conversation. And we'll have over 370 people in the stream consistently. Once again, guys, the majority, like Texas all the way through the southern part, except for Florida, and all the way up north in the Northeast is snowing. It's snowing in North Carolina right now. I'm not talking about, real snow is like a foot plus what I'm used to. This is like a couple of inches here in North Carolina. But again, when there's a little bit of snow in North Carolina, it's a state of emergency and everything shuts down. So everybody be safe if you're dealing with a snowstorm. Anybody who's in California or in the LA area, LA, Southern California, Malibu, Palisades, everywhere else around that area where it just got destroyed, unfortunately, by the wildfires. Be safe. Hope everybody's healthy and got out in time. Again, you can rebuild property. You can't rebuild a person. So be safe out there, guys. Prayers out to everybody in LA right now, going through it right now. Be safe, guys. Get through it. Hopefully soon you can start preparing to do what you need to do out over there. But prayers out to you guys in LA. Be safe in the snow, guys, if you're dealing with the snow. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in for Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X. If you are on X, head over to the channel real quick, subscribe to the channel, and hit on that like button, guys. Thank you for watching, guys. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. And I'll see you next time on another show, most likely a Mets Hot Stove, or any breaking news with possibly a Pete Alonso signing or somebody else. Have a great night, guys. Let's go Mets, and I'll see you next time. Good night, guys.
In the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine.